Clear out your desk, Amanda. We need people who actually prioritize their work. Those were the words that greeted me the morning I returned to the office. No hello, no sorry for your loss. Just a cold dismissal from my manager, Tom Reynolds, as if burying my sister had been a vacation instead of one of the hardest moments of my life. I froze, the fluorescent lights above buzzing faintly as my mind tried to process what I had just heard. 2 days. That was all I had taken. 2 days of approved leave to stand at my sister's graveside, to hold my mother's trembling hand, to help sort through the chaos that follows a sudden death. I had emailed Tom, submitted the leave request through HR, and even received his typed approval. Take the time you need. We'll manage. Apparently, managing meant deciding my grief proved I didn't care about work enough. I forced myself to breathe. Around me, the office was still waking up. Computers booting, coffee machines hissing, coworkers chatting about weekend plans. For me, it felt like a nightmare unfolding in slow motion. My name is Amanda Hughes. For the last 6 years, I'd been a project coordinator at Fairfield Global Logistics. My work wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. I had built a reputation as reliable, detail-oriented, and the kind of person who stayed until the job was done. My team knew I had their backs. I wasn't just an employee. I was a cornerstone of our department. Or so I thought. Now, Tom stood in front of my desk with his arms crossed, looking down at me like I was some failed experiment. You knew this was a critical week, he said flatly. Instead of being here, you left us shorthanded. It shows where your priorities lie, I stared at him, every word cutting deeper. Critical week? The project we'd been preparing for months had already been wrapped up. My team had worked late nights to meet the deadline before I left. The truth was, there was nothing critical about those 2 days, except the fact that my sister was gone forever. But I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I simply nodded, opened the bottom drawer of my desk, and began packing my things into a cardboard box. My hands moved automatically. Framed photos, the small, succulent plant Jason from IT had given me, the thank you card from a client I'd helped last year, 6 years of loyalty reduced to whatever fit between cardboard walls. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed people starting to watch. Tanya from finance froze mid-step with her coffee. Michelle, my closest colleague, leaned out from her cubicle, her face pale with disbelief. What's going on? She whispered. I've been let go, I said quietly, my voice steadier than I expected. Her jaw dropped. For what? For attending my sister's funeral. Her expression shifted from shock to anger, but before she could speak, Tom raised his voice. Back to work, everyone. Amanda has her reasons, but this is a company, not a support group. The words hung in the air, sour and heavy. No one moved for a moment. Then, reluctantly, keyboards clattered back to life, phones rang, and people pretended not to look. Except Michelle. She walked over, defiant, and placed her hand gently on my shoulder. This isn't right, she whispered. Don't let them get away with it. I forced a small smile, but inside my stomach churned. Fighting Tom wouldn't change the fact that I was already branded as disposable, and I wasn't about to humiliate myself further in front of people who were too scared to speak up. By 9 o'clock, my box was full. I stood, adjusted my blazer, and walked toward the elevator. As I passed the row of cubicles, I felt dozens of eyes on me. No one said a word, but I caught glimpses. Pity, guilt, fury. A silent solidarity that gave me a flicker of strength. Tom trailed behind me, his tone lowering as if to make himself sound reasonable. You could have handled this differently, Amanda, he muttered. You could have shown more commitment. It didn't have to end like this. I stopped and turned to face him. For the first time, I let the weight of my grief and anger sharpen my words. Commitment, I said, my voice cold. I gave this company 6 years of my life. Late nights, missed holidays. I didn't complain. And when I finally needed 2 days to bury my sister, you call that a lack of commitment? His face twitched, but he said nothing. I stepped into the elevator, meeting his eyes one last time. Remember this moment, Tom. Because I will. The doors slid shut between us. Outside, the September air felt warm against my skin, a sharp contrast to the icy atmosphere I'd just left behind. I placed the box gently in the back seat of my car and sat behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. My phone buzzed. A message from Michelle. This is wrong. Let's talk tonight. Then another from Jason in IT. Everyone's furious. We've got your back. One by one, messages poured in. Quiet words of loyalty from people who weren't free to show it in the office. They saw me. They knew. I stared out the windshield at the company building, its logo gleaming in the morning sun. A place I had once been proud to call my professional home. Now, just another reminder of betrayal. I didn't know what would happen next, but as I started the engine, one thought burned steady in my mind. I wouldn't fight them directly, but I wouldn't forget. And very soon they'd realize what they had thrown away. I thought leaving Fairfield Global Logistics would bring me a strange kind of peace. Instead, the days that followed felt like drifting through fog. Grief from losing my sister still sat heavy on my chest, but now it was layered with betrayal from the company I had devoted myself to for 6 years. On Tuesday morning, I woke up at 6:30 like I always did, muscle memory dragging me out of bed. For a split second, I reached for my work laptop before remembering it was already in a cardboard box in the back of my car. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the half-empty coffee cup I hadn't touched, wondering what my next step would be. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from Michelle. You won't believe what's happening here. A moment later, another came through. Tom is panicking. Henderson account files can't be found. I frowned. The Henderson account was one of our largest clients, and I'd personally handled their renewal preparation for weeks. Every report, every proposal, every client note, I had created an organized system on the server that only made sense if you knew my method. Not intentionally hidden, but let's just say it wasn't something Tom would be able to navigate overnight. I typed back quickly. Everything is on the server. My folders are labeled. If they can't find it, they're not looking in the right place. No reply. I tried to push it out of my mind, but by lunchtime, my phone buzzed again. Jason from IT this time. Tom just called an emergency team meeting. Everyone's furious. The CEO is asking questions. A rush of conflicting emotions washed over me. Satisfaction, anger, guilt. It hadn't even been 48 hours since I walked out, and already the cracks were beginning to show. That evening, I met Michelle at a small diner near my apartment. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, but her expression was fiery. You should have seen it today, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. Tom was pacing like a caged animal. He kept blaming everyone else, saying nobody had prepared the Henderson files properly. I stirred my tea slowly. And nobody pointed out that I had already finished them before I left? Oh, people pointed it out, Michelle said bitterly. But without you there, nobody knows how to present it the way the client expects. The system's a mess without you. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't looking for validation, but hearing that my absence left such a hole made me realize just how much value I had provided. Value Tom had dismissed as nothing. Michelle leaned forward, lowering her voice. The CEO was furious. He asked Tom why the project lead was suddenly unavailable, and Tom just muttered something about commitment issues. Everyone could see Hank didn't buy it. Hank? I repeated. Yeah, Hank Porter, the CEO. He looked like he wanted to strangle Tom right there in the conference room. She smirked faintly, then sighed. Amanda, people are talking. Everyone's asking questions about why you were really fired. I shook my head. I don't want to drag anyone into this. It's done. Michelle studied me carefully. Is it, though? Because it doesn't look like Fairfield is doing so well without you. Her words lingered with me long after she left. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. my sister's face drifting into my thoughts. She had always told me, "Don't let people walk all over you, Amanda. Know your worth." On Wednesday morning, my phone rang just as I was pouring coffee. I didn't recognize the number at first. When I answered, the voice on the other end made me pause. "Amanda Hughes?" "Yes." "This is Paula Martinez, Regional Director at Fairfield Global Logistics." I'd like to talk for a second. I thought I had misheard. Paula was Tom's boss, the kind of executive who rarely got involved unless something serious was happening. "I'm not sure what there is to talk about," I said cautiously. Her tone softened, but there was an urgency beneath it. "I understand you were terminated earlier this week. I want to hear your side of what happened." I hesitated. "Was this a trap?" "With all due respect, Paula, I don't work for Fairfield anymore. My side doesn't matter." "It matters," she said firmly. "The CEO has questions, and frankly, so do I." I ended the call without agreeing to meet. But my hands shook as I set down the phone. Why was the regional director suddenly interested? Why now, just days after Tom had coldly told me I didn't prioritize work? By Thursday, the whispers had turned into noise. Michelle texted, "Clients are asking for you directly. Wilson account threatened to pull their renewal if you're not involved." Jason added, "Tom's losing it." Hank demanded answers in front of the entire senior staff. Then came the message that stopped me in my tracks. Word is, the CEO wants to call you directly. I stared at my phone, heart pounding. Just a week ago, I was disposable, a nobody. Now, the CEO of the entire company was demanding to hear from me. I didn't know what I would say when that call came. But one thing was certain. Fairfield Global Logistics had made a grave mistake, and the fallout was only just beginning. Friday morning started like any other that week. Quiet, almost unnervingly so. I had no office to rush to, no deadlines to check, no back-to-back meetings filling my calendar. The silence should have been peaceful, but instead it gnawed at me. After 6 years of structure, the sudden emptiness felt foreign. I was midway through making breakfast when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in my gut told me to answer. "Hello? Is this Amanda Hughes?" The voice was deep, steady. "Yes, speaking." "This is Hank Porter, CEO of Fairfield Global Logistics." I froze. I had never spoken to him directly. He was the kind of executive you only saw in quarterly town halls or company newsletters, not someone who casually called middle managers. "I'd like a word about your departure," he continued. "Do you have a moment?" I swallowed, my heart pounding. "I suppose I do." There was no small talk. Hank went straight to the point. "I've received concerning reports about how your termination was handled. Clients are calling, demanding to know why their account lead has disappeared. Internally, several of your colleagues have raised serious concerns. I need to understand what happened." I gripped the edge of the counter. His tone wasn't angry. It was clipped, controlled. But beneath it, I heard urgency. "I was fired," I said evenly, "for taking 2 days of approved leave to attend my sister's funeral." There was a pause. A silence so heavy I thought the line had gone dead. Then Hank spoke, his voice lower. "That's the official reason Tom gave?" "Yes." Another pause. Then, "That's unacceptable." For the first time that week, I felt a spark of validation, but I wasn't going to let emotion cloud my judgment. "With respect, Mr. Porter," I said carefully, "it wasn't just unacceptable. It was dehumanizing. I gave 6 years to that company. I met deadlines, trained new staff, stayed late whenever needed. And when I finally needed 2 days, I was treated like I'd abandoned my post." He exhaled sharply, as though trying to contain his frustration. "I wasn't informed of this." If I had been... He trailed off. "Amanda, would you be willing to meet with me and Paula Martinez on Monday? I want to resolve this matter directly." The thought of walking back into that building made my stomach turn. I pictured Tom's smug face, the coldness of HR's office, the silence of my colleagues too scared to speak up. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut on all of it, but another part whispered, "This is leverage." "I'll think about it," I said finally. "I hope you do," Hank replied. His voice softened slightly. "And Amanda? I'm very sorry for your loss. You deserved compassion, not punishment." When the call ended, I sat down slowly, staring at the phone in my hand. The CEO himself had apologized to me, something I'd never imagined. Yet beneath the apology, I sensed desperation. Fairfield was bleeding, and my absence had ripped the wound wider. That afternoon, Michelle called. Her voice was tense. "You should have seen it today. Henderson account just announced they're reconsidering their contract." Tom looked like he was about to faint. I felt a bitter pang of satisfaction. Maybe now he understands what commitment really means. "It's more than that," Michelle said. "Paul has been digging into his record. There are whispers about previous complaints. People are starting to talk about whether he even belongs in that role." The pieces were shifting faster than I expected. Just a week ago, I had been disposable. Now, the man who humiliated me was suddenly the one under scrutiny. That night, lying awake, I thought about my sister again. She had been the fiery one, the one who always pushed me to stand up for myself. "You're stronger than you think, Amanda. Don't let people silence you." Maybe this was my chance. Not just to defend myself, but to show that treating people as disposable had consequences. On Saturday morning, I went for a long walk along the river. The air was crisp, the water rushing steadily past the rocks. I thought about the team I'd left behind: Michelle, Jason, the others, people who had sent message after message of support. They didn't just lose a colleague when I left. They lost their advocate, their buffer against Tom's arrogance. My phone buzzed again. A text from Jason. "Word is, the board knows now. Big changes coming." Another from Michelle. "If you go back in Monday, don't go alone. Everyone wants to back you up." I stopped walking, the river roaring in my ears. For the first time since that cold Friday morning when Tom had told me to clear my desk, I felt something shift inside me. Not grief, not anger. Something steadier. Resolve. By the end of the weekend, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't walking back into Fairfield as a discarded employee. I was walking back as someone who finally knew her worth, and they were about to learn it too. Monday morning, I walked into Fairfield Global Logistics with my head high, though my stomach was tight with nerves. The glass doors slid open as if nothing had changed, but everything had. I wasn't the same Amanda who had been humiliated a week ago. I carried no cardboard box this time, only a leather folder with a few notes and a copy of Tom's email approving my bereavement leave. Proof. Not that I needed it, but having it in my hand felt like armor. At the reception desk, the woman gave me a polite but wary smile. "Good morning, Amanda. They're expecting you upstairs." The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, Paula Martinez was waiting. Dressed in a navy suit, she looked more composed than I felt, but there was an urgency in her eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "Hank's already in the conference room." We walked together, and I noticed the whispers as we passed rows of desks. People paused mid-typing, their eyes following me. Some offered subtle nods of encouragement. Others looked simply curious. Word had spread. Inside the conference room, Hank Porter stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear. He ended the call as soon as he saw us. "Amanda, thank you for agreeing to meet." I nodded, forcing my voice to remain calm. "You asked for my side of the story." "I'm here to give it," Paula motioned for me to sit. Across the table was an empty chair. I didn't need to ask who it was for. A few moments later, Tom Reynolds walked in. His face was pale, his jaw tight. He avoided my eyes as he sat down, fumbling with his tie. "Let's begin," Hank said, his tone clipped. "Amanda, you were terminated last week. I've heard multiple accounts of what happened. Please explain. In your own words, I pulled the printed email from my folder and slid it across the table. I requested 2 days of bereavement leave to attend my sister's funeral. Tom approved it. When I returned, he told me to clear my desk because I didn't prioritize work. That's the entire story. Paula's expression hardened as she read the email. Hank scanned it too, his face darkening. Tom? Hank asked finally. Tom cleared his throat. It was a critical operational week. We needed all hands on deck. Amanda's absence, while unfortunate, sent the wrong message to the team about priorities. Priorities? I said sharply, unable to hold back. My sister was dead, Tom. I wasn't on a beach. I wasn't at a spa. I was burying my family's silence. Even Paula shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Hank leaned forward, his voice cold. Tom, did you escalate this before terminating Amanda? Did you consult HR, or me, or even Paula? Tom stammered. No, but as department manager, I had discretion. You had poor judgment. Hank cut in. And now we're at risk of losing 2 of our largest accounts because of it. Paula spoke up, her voice sharp. Henderson has already delayed their renewal pending Amanda's involvement. Wilson has threatened to walk. Do you have any idea what this is costing us? Tom's face reddened. With respect, these clients are overreacting. Amanda wasn't irreplaceable. Irreplaceable enough that your team can't function without her. Paula snapped. I stayed quiet, letting their words hang in the air. For once, I didn't need to defend myself. The truth was doing the work for me. Hank turned back to me. Amanda, what outcome are you seeking? The question caught me off guard. I hadn't planned to demand anything. Part of me wanted to say I didn't want anything from Fairfield. But another part knew this was my chance to set the record straight. Not just for me, but for everyone who had watched in silence as Tom humiliated me. I don't want my job back, I said finally. The trust is broken. What I want is acknowledgement, written acknowledgement that I was wrongfully terminated. My reputation in this industry matters, and Tom's decision shouldn't stain it. Hank nodded slowly. That's reasonable. Paula added, we can draft a formal letter today. Tom shifted uncomfortably. You can't just... Yes, we can, Hank said firmly. And as of now, Tom, you're suspended pending an internal review. The color drained from Tom's face. For the first time, he looked small, deflated. I stood, gathering my folder. Then we're done here. Hank stood too. Amanda, thank you for your time. And again, my condolences. You deserved better than this, I met his gaze. Thank you. I know my worth now. As I left the building, whispers followed me again. But this time, they weren't whispers of pity. They were whispers of recognition, of respect. Outside, the autumn air felt crisp, almost invigorating. My phone buzzed. Michelle. Word is Tom's been suspended. About time. Then another from Jason. Clients are asking if you'll be back. Everyone's rooting for you. I typed back a simple reply. I'm not coming back. But this isn't over, because in that moment I realized the true revenge wasn't just walking away with my head high. It was watching Fairfield unravel because of the arrogance of one man, and knowing I no longer had to carry the weight of it. And something told me, the unraveling had only just begun. 2 weeks after that tense Monday meeting, the letter from Fairfield arrived in my mailbox. Plain envelope. Company letterhead. I stood in my kitchen and read it 3 times to make sure I hadn't imagined it. We acknowledge that the termination of Amanda Hughes was conducted in error and without sufficient cause. We regret the circumstances and confirm that she remains in good standing within the industry. Signed by Hank Porter, CEO. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was enough. Enough to prove that Tom's decision hadn't been about my competence or my worth. Enough to protect my reputation in an industry where one rumor could end a career. I folded the letter neatly, placed it in a file, and felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Meanwhile, Fairfield was in freefall. Michelle and Jason kept me updated through late-night texts and quick coffee catch-ups. Henderson pulled their renewal entirely, Wilson froze negotiations until they could be sure Tom was no longer involved. Smaller accounts started trickling away too. Clients didn't just want results, they wanted trust. And trust had evaporated. Tom's office is cleared out, Michelle told me one night. He's gone. Nobody's saying it officially, but it's over for him. I thought about the man who had told me coldly to clear my desk, as if 6 years of loyalty were nothing. I should have felt satisfaction, maybe even triumph. Instead, I just felt done, like a chapter I didn't need to revisit. Fairfield scrambled to contain the damage. Paula, to her credit, reached out again, this time not with demands, but with honesty. We're restructuring, she admitted over the phone, trying to rebuild trust. But I don't blame you for walking away. I thanked her politely. But the truth was, Fairfield had already burned its bridges with me, because something else had happened in those 2 weeks. The day after my confrontation, I received a call from a competitor, Atlas Freight Solutions. Their regional VP had heard rumblings about my situation and wanted to talk. Word travels fast in logistics. Within days, I was sitting in a bright office across town, being offered a role as operations manager. Better pay, better hours. A culture that, from everything I'd seen, valued its people instead of grinding them down. I accepted. On my first day, I walked into Atlas's open plan office to find a desk already waiting for me. Flowers on top, a handwritten card from the team. Welcome, Amanda. We're glad you're here. It was such a small thing, but it hit me harder than I expected. After weeks of feeling disposable, here I was, valued before I'd even proven myself. Michelle and Jason applied a few weeks later, then Veronica from client services. One by one, familiar faces began to appear at Atlas, each of them saying the same thing. Fairfield doesn't deserve us. We'd rather work where people matter. By December, I was managing a team that felt alive again. We worked hard, yes, but we laughed too. We celebrated birthdays. We checked in on each other when someone was going through a tough time. It reminded me of what work was supposed to be. People, not just numbers. One afternoon, Michelle walked into my office with a grin. Guess who just signed with us? She said, waving a contract. I scanned the papers. Henderson. The very account Tom had nearly destroyed. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not out of spite, but out of sheer relief. It felt like the final piece falling into place. That night, I drove out to the cemetery where my sister was buried. The air was cold, the grass frosted at the edges, but I needed to be there. I stood by her headstone, hands tucked into my coat pockets, and spoke softly. They fired me for going to your funeral, I said. But it led me here. To something better. To people who actually value me. You always told me not to let anyone walk over me. I think you'd be proud. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment I felt a strange calm. As I drove home, I realized something important. My revenge hadn't been in watching Fairfield collapse or Tom lose his job. It hadn't been in the letter Hank Porter signed or the gossip that spread through the industry. My real revenge was simple. I had built something better. I had walked away with dignity, found a place that respected me, and taken people I cared about with me. Fairfield had lost not because I fought them, but because they showed their true values. And in the end, those values destroyed them. The best revenge wasn't shouting, suing, or burning bridges. It was thriving. And I was.